Recording in progress.
Yeah, let's talk details later about who these people are, so I can plan better. Good evening. I don't even mean that. Good evening. We're learning Maseches Rosh Hashana Daf Yomi. It is a long blot, an interesting blot, and we're going to get started. We're starting with a fresh Mishnah at the last line of Chav Daled Amud Beis. Let's get started. Maisa, there was a story that we had said that by the very end of the month that they saw the old moon by Shachris and the Mizrach, and they saw the new moon by Mariv, but we said that's impossible. Remember, we said that there had to be a 24-hour break between the two moons. So it says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yochanan ben Nuri in the Mishnah at the top of Chaf Mem Aleph, Eidei Sheker Heim. It's impossible. These people are not correct. However, Kshabo Yavne, at a time when the Sanhedrin was located in Yavne, so then Kiblu Rabban Gamliel, he did accept their Eidus, even though it was an Eidus that was a little bit difficult to understand. Okay, so then the Mishnah continues to Ode, and furthermore, another difficult case that Rabban Yochanan, that Rabban Gamliel accepted, Ode Bo Shnaim V'Amru Re'inuhu Bizmano, Ubalel Iburo Lo Nira, that they saw on the 30th. They saw the moon on the 30th. That was Bismano. Ubalel Iburo on the night, which would have been the slam dunk that it would have been a month that was an Ibor, Lo Nira. And in that case too, says the Gemara, V'Kibla and Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel also accepted that testimony. Two cases that seemingly are not very logical to accept. So much so that says the Gemara in the fourth line of Chaf Hamad Aleph Amar Reb Dosa ben Horkenes, Eidei Sheker Hein. Rabban Gamliel, I don't understand. These people are Eidei Sheker. It's impossible. Both of these cases are not feasible. How can it be that yesterday she had a baby and today she's still pregnant? Obviously, just a mashal to highlight. You've got your things out of order here. The moon showed up and then didn't show up. That doesn't make sense. It should be a new moon. So Amar Lo Rabbi Yoshua, Roe Anias Devarecha. I even agree with you, Rabbi Dosa. So then, Shalach Lo Rabban Gamliel. Rabban Gamliel, who everyone was pouncing on for his shita. And he said to Rabbi Yoshua, goes, Rani Alecha, I'm making the following zera against you. Shatavo etzli b'makelcha uv'ma'osecha b'yom kippurim shechal lios b'cheshboncha. See, I say, says Rabban Gamliel, that I'm makabel the Eidus and it's Rosh Chodesh on the 30th. You're saying that really we shouldn't be makabel and it's therefore on the 31st is Rosh Chodesh, which therefore means that if this is the month of Elul, that Yom Kippur is going to be pushed off a day. So Rabban Gamliel was playing the ace up his sleeve. He says, you, according to your cheshbon, which is Yom Kippur, I demand of you that you come to me carrying your money and carrying your cane. So now it's like the fight outside the saloon. You know, everybody's holding their gun and Rabban Gamliel is just throwing down. And he's saying, I'm going to force you to come see what I mean. I'm telling you that I'm right. You need to come to me on what you think is Yom Kippur. Now, if you push off, if you make the month Me'ubar, that means Yom Kippur is going to be a day later. So the way that it would work is that according to Rabban Gamliel's math, Yom Kippur, well, let's call it the 10th of Tishrei. And according to the math of the others, it would have fallen out a day later in the 11th of Tishrei, and therefore it was gozer on them. So that's what the Mishnah says. We'll see more details about this in a little bit. So that's what the Gemara says. We're about 10 lines down on Chaf Hamad Aleph. The Mishnah continues. Halachu mitzah Rabbi Akiva Meitzar. This is a very hard line to translate. The Gemara is going to translate it. Halachu mitzah Rabbi Akiva Meitzar. Who was Meitzar? Who was troubled? Was Rabbi Akiva Meitzar? Or was somebody else troubled? We'll see soon. So Amar Lo, he said to him, Yeshli lilmod. There's something that I need to learn. Everything that he said ended up being correct. In this regard. No matter what, he's going to be right. I have to follow the guidelines that Rabban Gamliel sets. He's the one who knows what he's talking about. So then he came to Rabbi Yossi ben Horkenes and Amar Lo, if we're really going to ask a kasha on the Beis Din of Rabban Gamliel, we are opening a Pandora's box. Why? Because then, last short line on the Amud of Chaf Hamad Aleph, then Srichananu Ladun Achar Kol Bezdin Ubezdin Shamad Mimos Moshe V'ad Achshav. And if you find one mistake looking back, the whole calendar adjusts by a day. And that you're causing some serious retroactive problems. It can't be that way, implies the Gemara. And therefore, it must be that we leave it alone. Shneimar, how do we know about Moshe in regards to the Moshe and his Beis Din? Says the Gemara, Shneimar Vayal Moshe v'Aaron Nadav v'Avihu v'Shivim Miziknei Yisrael. So that's what the pasuk says. Mishivim ziknei Yisrael. Why don't we know who those people are? V'lama lo nisparshu shmos and shel zakenim. Why don't we say who they are? We've given some real estate in the Torah to Moshe, quite a bit, and to others, and Nadav and Avihu. Why is it that these people were left out? Ella. And here the Gemara, the Mishnah is giving a very, very important point. This is a long Mishnah, almost till halfway down on the page. Ella lelamed, second of the wide lines, third of the way down. Shekol shlosha ushlosha, she'amdu bezdin al Yisrael. In any case scenario where you have three people that are sitting on a bezdin, they're dayanim, harehu kebeis dino shel Moshe. They have halachic status similar to that of Moshe. So let's say that a person has a case of a din Torah and they have to go to the CRC or to the Aguda for a din Torah. The three dayanim who sit up there, dino kemoshe. They have the halachic status. It's as if in halachic terms that they go to Moshe. You don't have a right to argue with them. It should be with a similar deference that whatever they say goes. And that's what the Mishnah writes. Anyways, what ended up happening with the whole fight that they were having about this month, where Rabbi Gamliel accepted Eidim that others thought were Eidei Sheker? So the Mishnah concludes with the following story. Rabbi Yoshua did the following: Natal makalo ma'osab biyado v'halach liyav neitzel Rabbi Gamliel b'yom shechal yom ha'kippurim lios b'cheshbono, on what would have been the 11th of Tishrei as it related to Rabbi Gamliel, but Yom Kippur according to Rabbi Yoshua. So what did he do? He fasted the day before. If he's going to bow his head so significantly that he's willing to do all of these things that would otherwise be asr on Yom Kippur, it must be that he then embraced the shita of Rabban Gamliel, and so much so that Omar Rabban Gamliel uneshako al rosho, he came over to him and he gave him a kiss on the head. Omar lo bo b'shalom Rebbe v'talmidi. You should come in peace, my rabbi, my teacher, and my student. He was both. Rebbe b'chachma, Rabbi Yeshua was wiser than Rabban Gamliel, and Rabban Gamliel knew it. The Talmidi, you're also my student in a way, because shekibalta es devarai, because you've accepted my shita. End of the Mishnah, end of the scene. A couple of quick halachos and a couple of stories. Let's pick up with the Gemara almost halfway down on Chaf Hey Amud Aleph Tanya. The Brisa writes, Amar lehem Rabban Gamliel l'chachamim kach mekublani mi beis avi abba. I have learned from my father's house. Sometimes the moon has a long trail in the sky, and sometimes it has a very short trail in the sky. How do we know? The summer of Yochanan. My time of debate, this should be Rabban Gamliel, not Rebbe. We weren't talking about Rebbe. We were talking about Rabban Gamliel. That's what we have here on the side. It says in the Hagos V'Tzion, B'kisve Yadu Yalkut Shimoni, Hagirsa, my time of the Rabban Gamliel. That makes a lot more sense because we weren't talking about Rebbe. So says the Gemara, how do we know that it's true that the moon doesn't follow such a rigid path? We know this intuitively because, says the Gemara, Dichsiv, Asa Yerach Lamoadim, Shemesh Yoda Mevo'o. Shemesh hu the Yoda Mevo'o. We know the path of the sun, Yareach Lo Yoda Mevo'o. And we know this intuitively as well. We wake up in the morning, we could, for all intents and purposes, approximate where the sun would go. We know that the sun rises approximately due east off a few degrees from the horizon, depending on exactly where you are. And then it kicks off to the south. In the summer, it's to the south of the equator, but closer to the equator, and then comes back down. And in the winter, it kicks out further south in the dead of the winter, and let's call it the deepest part of the winter, and then it comes back and sets in the west. But the moon doesn't follow any of those regular rules. So that's what the Gemara says. And then the Gemara tells a little bit of a story. Rabbi Chia, he saw that the moon was showing itself on the morning of the 29th. Now, that's not helpful. The morning of the 29th doesn't mean anything because that's all old moon. The only time it's helpful to see a moon is after the day is over the 29th, seeing it on the 30th. And if in fact it's the right kind of moon with all of the questions and interrogations that we saw earlier, if in fact that's the case, then we can make that month a chaser, make it 29 and make the 30th Rosh Chodesh. But here he saw the moon too early in the morning. So Shakal Kali picked up some mud, Pasak Bein, he whipped it at the moon. Okay, a little bit of strange behavior. Says the Gemara, what's going on here? Omar, he yells at the moon. Zil ichsi, go hide yourself. I need you at night. I don't need you right now. Get out of here. What good are you going to do? So this was really, you have to understand, like the emotional space here is important, is that they were anticipating that all Kiddush HaChodesh would be done b're'iyah. And if they saw the moon that morning, it's like frustrating to see it early. Like, come on, like give me a few hours, wait till the sun sets, then you're the new moon, and then we can discuss. So that's what he says, Zil Ichsi, go hide yourself. Why do you have to say go hide yourself? Because we know that there's a 24-hour break where you can't see anything. So every minute you see the moon is another minute you have to wait within your 24-hour count. So if you saw the moon on the morning at 10 a.m., let's say Ledugma, you saw the moon at 10 a.m. on the 29th, so then he has to wait 24 hours for the moon to be the Chadash, to be the new moon again. So that's a problem. Says the Gemara, Amar le Rebbe, he says to him, Zil le'ein tov, go to this city called Ein Tov, the Kad Sheli Yarcha. There, once the night falls, and it's been 24 hours, you'll be able to be Makadesh the Chodesh, the Shalach li Simna, and then send me a sign that you were Makadesh. What's the sign? David Melech Yisrael Chai V'Kayim. Now we get a little bit of a glimpse as to why this pasuk is found in the Kiddush Levana packets that we say. What does this have to do with anything? So take a look at Rashi. Rashi is about 15 lines or so from the bottom of the page. He was compared to the moon. That last line is questionable if it belongs. You can see the lengthy commentary of the Hagos Tzionim here. Either way, a reference to David HaMelech. Next, Tanu Rabbanan, a question that my father asked last night, though it will not be answered specifically in the way that we were hoping. Tanu Rabbanan, Pamachas niskashu shamayim be'avim. There was a time when it was very cloudy outside. V'niris dmus levana be'esrim v'tisha l'chodesh, and the moon showed itself on the 29th of the month. The people said, great, we see the moon on the 29th, maybe we should be Mekadesh. Amar lehem Rabban Gamliel, no. Kach mekublani mi beis avi abba. I have a Masorah from my family. Ein chidusha shelvana. The moon never renews. Pchusa, less than mi esrim v'tisha yom, 29 days, umechza, and half of a day, which is 12 hours, ushne shlishe shah, 2/3 of an hour, so 12 hours and 40 minutes, the ayin gimel chalakim. Ayin gimel chalakim, what is a chelak? And we say this every time with 25 chalakim. So every hour is broken up into 1,080 units. So that when this is 72 units, so basically the way that it works is it's 4 minutes approximately. So the way that it works is if you take the amount of time that Rabban Gamliel is saying, it is 12 hours plus another 40 minutes and another 4 minutes and 3 seconds. So 12 hours, 44 minutes and 3 seconds. And if you take that and put it into a decimal point form, you will find that the amount of time that Rabban Gamliel had understood, had learned from his family, was the exact average of a solar month is to 2 decimal points, exactly what NASA calculates as the same. So Rabban Gamliel comes out to just shy of 29.53 days. And I have it right here. I went online and I figured this. I didn't figure it out. I looked it up. I didn't figure anything out. Says the Gemara nothing. Says the Gemara Rabban Gamliel. Says NASA 29.53059 days. So it's pretty awesome. We were just shy of getting into that second decimal point. They use a browser for that? Well, Mark. Yeah, I used a browser for that. Yeah. I don't have the NASA app, but it would be part of my personality if I did. It's true. It's true, but I don't know. So that's what the Gemara says. Esha Torah uses this as a well-known argument that of course, if Rabban Gamliel knew to 2 decimal points or approximately 2 decimal points what the lunar month was, and for millennia, people have been trying to struggle and figure out exactly how to make the lunar and solar months jive. So the Jews had something good going for them. Okay, that's the icing on the cake. It's not the reason to be from, but it does help once you are from. Okay, that's what the Gemara says. He said, therefore, because the moon was showing before that point in the day, before that 12 hours and 44 minutes and 3 seconds, so therefore that day is not Rosh Chodesh. And to prove his point, it happened to be that there was a man whose name was Ben Zaza, whose mother died. And what he had done is he agreed to give a hesped on that day. And when he gave the hesped on that day, what was he showing? He was showing that it wasn't Rosh Chodesh. Can't give a hesped on Rosh Chodesh. So it says the Gemara, he speak the Rabban Gamliel hesped gadol. Oh, she's such a gewaldike tzadekes. He's speaking about her through the teeth. Says the Gemara, lo mi pnei sheru'uya lekach. She wasn't such a graisa tzadika. She was a regular woman. However, El Kadeshi Yedu Ha'am Shelo Kitchu Bezdin Es HaChodesh. Wow, you get the nasi to give you a hesped, only to show
timing is everything.
Timing is everything. She died on the right day, and he was the one who gave the hesped. But again, it wasn't for any reason other than Rabbi Gamliel being a halachist, and he had to say, today is not Rosh Chodesh. You saw the moon. I'm going to show you b'fem maleh that you are all wrong. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give a hesped on this day to a woman who does not deserve it. 2/3 of the way down at the two dots says the Gemara. Halach Rabbi Akiva Mitzvah Meitzar. As mentioned, this was a difficult line to understand. Who was the one who was downtrodden? Rabbi Akiva Meitzar or Rabbi Yoshua Meitzar? We don't know who it was. It was Rabbi Akiva bothered or Rabbi Yoshua? So remember the discussion in our Mishnah that Rabbi Yoshua was told that he had to go to Rabban Gamliel on Yom Kippur according to his math, which would have required some halachic infractions. So says the Gemara, let's see if we can figure out an answer. Tashma, let's see. The Tanya, the Brisa writes, Halach Rabbi Akiva umitzal, the Rabbi Yoshua shumeitzar kishehu meitzar. This is a very explicit brisa, and now our Mishnah is more clear that the person who was upset in our Mishnah was Rabbi Yoshua. Amar lo, he says to him, Rabbi mipnei ma'ata meitzar. So Rabbi Akiva says to Rabbi Yoshua, why are you so sad? Why are you so distraught? Amar lo, he says to him, Akiva, Ra'ui lo sheyipol lemita yud beis chodesh va'yigzar alav gzerzu. I'm better off being in bed for 12 months than forcing me to go on what I think is Yom Kippur. That's ridiculous. Amar lo, Rebbe, tarsheni lomar lefanecha davrecha shalimad. Tani, can I please share one thing that you taught me? One thing that we learned. Amar lo emor. Yes, you can. Amar lo harehu omer. 3 different psukim say atem 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 gimel pe'amim. It says it 3 times. So the first one, atem afilu shogegin. It's going to be for you, even if you're shogegin, atem afilu mazid, and even if you pick the wrong month intentionally, it'll still be halachically correct. Atem afilu mu'at, and even if you're in the minority. And b'lashon hazeh amar lo, he says to him, akiva nichamtani. This is a slightly different one than the one that we're used to, where it says akiva nichamtani, and then it says Akiva's name again. That's the Gemara in Makos after the fox and the Beis Hamikdash, the famous story. So here it just says Akiva nichamtani, that he halachically gave Rabbi Yoshua a degree of calm, knowing that he was going to have to do some Isser Malacha on Yom Kippur to make it to the home of Rabban Gamliel with his makel. But he was, that's the famous line that we say in the Gemara all the time, Koach de hetera adif. It's not so hard to be strict, but it's hugely difficult to be mekel. Very, very difficult to be mekel. So here it's the biggest kula ever. You're violating Yom Kippur. Unbelievable level of commitment that you have to have. And you could also understand the political divide, that for those who didn't agree with the party line, quote unquote, of Rabban Gamliel, you're asking me to keep Yom Kippur on a different day. Unbelievable ask. Rabbi Gamliel held his ground and he said, I know I'm right. And you're going to need to do what I'm asking you to do. Next. Reb Dosa ben Horknes, as we saw in the Mishnah, the Reb Yeshua went to go to him as well. Tan Rabbanan, Laman lo nisparshu shmosam shel zakenim halalu. Why were their names not mentioned? And the Gemara is now going to give a lot of Mar Mekomos about this. Shelo yomer adam ploni ki Moshe ve'Aaron, ploni ki Nadav ve'Avihu, ploni ki Eldad u'Medad. We don't want anyone to say that you have to be as holy as these Jews, as Moshe and Aaron, and the others as well, in order to be on a bezdin. Ve'omer, and as well we have other Mar Mekomos. Ve'omer Shmuel el ha'am Hashem asher asa es Moshe ves Aaron. That's one part of the pasuk. The Omer, and as well he says, "Vayishlach Hashem es Yerubal ve'es Bedan ve'es Yiftach ve'Shmuel." Yerubal is a Gidon. V'lama nikra Shmo Yerubal she'asa meriva im Baal, because he fought against the avodah zarah of Baal. Bedan ze Shimshon. V'lama nikra Shemo Bedan de'asi midan. And Yiftach kemashmo. So what do we see here? That all of these people are equivalent to Moshe and they're Yiftach and Shmuel. They're not the same as Moshe, but they're treated equivalently. The Omer, and famously the line that we dramatize all the time during Friday night davening, Moshe v'Aaron v'Choanav Shmuel v'Koresh Shemo. So we see over here that Shmuel and Moshe are in the same pasuk. Moshe is not the same as Shmuel. Shmuel is not the same as Moshe. Moshe ad Moshe lo kam k'Moshe. He's the best. Says the Gemara, Shakal hakasu shlosha kale olam kishlosha chamure olam. I would not want to be in either of these lists, but it's certainly somewhat uncomfortable to be in the kale olam list. 3 lightweights against 3 of the heavyweights. Lomar lach, what does this teach you? Yeruval bedoro ke Moshe bedoro, Bedan bedoro ke Aaron bedoro, Yiftach bedoro ke Shmuel bedoro. That when it comes to dayanos, whoever the rav is, whoever the dayan is in your generation, that is your responsibility to be respectful of that person. Your job is to assume that they are halachically ke Moshe. We treat them as the same. This isn't a request. It's not some type of lofty midah. It's the din. It's the din. They are the bezdin. That is how their jobs evolved. That's how they got their jobs. However they got it, and it doesn't matter. At the end of the day, they are the dayan. Lila mencha, 5 lines down on Chav Hamid Beis. To teach you, she'afilu kal shebekalin v'nisman parnes al hatzibur, that even the lightest of lightweights, who was appointed to be a leader over the tzibur harehu ke'abir shebe'abirim, we assume that he's like the strongest of the strong. If you have a person that's in a position of authority in a community, so then we treat them accordingly. So again, it's not always easy, but that's the responsibility that we have. You'll argue, what about this? Yeah, there are rules. You can't just make things up. You can't break halacha. Yeah, of course, obviously. But someone who is otherwise in keeping with halacha, all this exploded all over the entire world, certainly where I work, about did you close your shuls? Did you not close your shuls? How firm are you? How dare you? We need the shuls to daven. Yeah, we need the shuls to daven, but people are getting sick. So things were very murky. So there was a lot of vitriol that was thrown back and forth. Not simple. The Omer, one more Marimakom, 7 lines down. Whoever is the leader in your day. Would you really ever think what, you're going to do some incantations and call the dead? They're not even alive anymore. You can't call Moshe Rabbeinu. We live in 2021. He died 3,500 years ago. So says the Gemara, of course not. You have to pick the leader that's in your day, and that's the end of the conversation. The Omer, another the previous days were better. Maybe we wish we had those leaders. No, and no. The halacha is that we follow the leaders of our times. If you have dayanim, if you have leaders of the community, not like we have some of these halachos do play out in a funny way. Like if you have on Rosh Hashana, there's a din that if a chazan takes the amud b'tokef, so you're not supposed to answer amen to anything he says. He's not a shliach of the tzibur. The whole point of the shliach tzibur is to be a shliach of the tzibur. If it's not merutza l'kahal, you're done. You're out. You're goodbye. So sometimes this happens when people age out and they really should stop davening, but they don't want to stop davening. They're not merutza l'kahal at some point. Rabbi Robinson said that these are some very difficult halachic conversations to have because you're not really supposed to remove someone, but how do you balance it out? Not so simple. So we're not talking about someone who takes the podium b'tokef. We're talking here about people who are nismane. They were appointed properly. You don't like them, get over it. It's not about you. It's about the community. And the community has a leader, and you have to fall in line. Quarter of the way down at the 2 dots. The story in our Mishnah of Rabbi Yoshua going to Rabban Gamliel. Tanu Rabban, and the Brisa relates a similar story. So when Rabban Gamliel saw Rabbi Yoshua, Aman Mikiso v'nashko al Rosho, he got up and kissed him on his head. Amar lach, Shalom Alecha Rebbe v'Talmidi, a different language. So our Mishnah said Bo v'Shalom. Here it says Shalom Alecha Rebbe v'Talmidi. This is very similar to the amount of time that we consider in halacha to be the amount of time of a hefsek. So sometimes, I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but it certainly happened to me, where I was in the middle of putting on my tefillin in the morning, and instead of saying the bracha of Asher Kedeshanu b'mitzvah savet tzivanu laniach tefillin, I made a borei pri hagafen or a hamotzi or a shahakol or any other bracha under the sun, which I've done numerous times. Now, if you catch yourself within a very short period of time, called k'dei achilas pras, so the amount of time of Bichdei Achilas Pras is very, very simple. Not Bichdei Achilas Pras. Toch K'dei Dibur. Bichdei Achilas Pras is 9 minutes. That's a very long time. I'm very tired. I'm sorry. I need more caffeine. I've only had 7 caffeines today. So only, and I'm going to finish my tea after this. So in the frame of time of Toch K'dei Dibur, which is just a few moments, how do we measure that time? It's with a phrase just like this, Shalom Alecha Rebbe Umori. That's how we measure it. It's a few seconds. So if you are putting on your tefillin and you accidentally make the bracha of whatever, Al Natilas Yadayim, or the wrong tefillin bracha, or any bracha, and you correct yourself within a short period of time, then you're okay to go. Then you can continue. That's fine. So this is the phrase of Shalom Alecha Rebbe Umori. Here he says he kissed him on the head. And Rabban Gamliel says to him, Amar lo shalom alecha Rebbe v'Talmidi, peace is upon you, my teacher and my student, Rebbe she limad tani Torah b'Rabim. Again, slightly different language than our Mishnah. Here, because you taught me Torah in public, v'Talmidi she ani gozer alecha gzera v'atam mekayma ketalmid. But you listen, even though it's hard for you, you listen. Ashrei hador shehagdolim nishmoim lektanim. This is Rabban Gamliel talking. What a lovely generation in which we live. We're the greats. You're greater than I am, Rabbi Gamliel says to Rabbi Yoshua, and you still listen to me because of my role in the community. You're very respectful. Says the Gemara, Kal v'chomer ktana magdolim, all the more so for people who are lesser than, not in a social emotional way, but those who are lower on the food chain than the poskei hador, that of course they have to listen. It says the Gemara, what do you mean a kal v'chomer? It's pashat chiyuv. That's a pasuk in Chumash. You're obligated to listen, right or left, whatever the chachamim say. The pasuk in Shoftim. Lo sasur min hadavar she'agidu l'chayaminu smol. We're obligated to listen to the chachamim. What do you mean it's a kal v'chomer? It's not a kal v'chomer. You're mechuyev to listen to the chachamim. Says the Gemara, you're right. It's just giving you the emotional space here. Ella, says the Gemara, as we wrap up this parak. Ella mitoch she'agdolim nishmaim l'ktanim. When the regular people see that the greats, that Rabbi Yoshua is capitulating and he's bowing his head to Rabbi Gamliel, then no simtanim kal v'chomer ba'atman, like I really should be more respectful. Of course they have a chiyuv, but I'm obligated. Hadron alachi minan makir niratzon. We should come back to this daf in 7.5 years. Halfway down on daf Chav Hey Amud Beis, let's continue. We're going to go to the very top of the next page. We'll stop at that next Mishnah on Chav Vav Amud Aleph. Says the next Mishnah halfway down, Ra'uhu Bezdin v'chol Yisrael. Let's say that everyone, Bezdin and all of the Jews, they see the new moon. So what do? Nechkeru ha'edim, and then they did their investigations of the edim. Below he speak ulomar mekudash ad shechashecha. The sun set before they got the words mekudash out of their mouths. Harezem meubar. That is not Rosh Chodesh. Then we don't treat the 30th as Rosh Chodesh, but rather it's meubar. Now the 30th is not Rosh Chodesh, but it's an additional day in the previous month. And Rosh Chodesh will be the next day and the 31st day from the previous mola. Next case, third line of the new Mishnah, Chav Hey Amud Beis, Ra'u Bezdin Bilvad. What if not all the people saw it? Just Bezdin, they were out on the rooftop, they were all schmoozing, they were learning Torah, whatever it was. They all looked up, they're like, oh, perfect. We have Mekudash HaChodesh, this is great. So what do you do? So Yamdu Shnaim V'Eidu B'Fneim. We take some of the witnesses, as this is called Eid Na'aseh Dayan. We're going to discuss this sugya briefly at the top of the next page. So it says the Gemara, the Eidim become the Dayanim. Yamdu Shnayim v'ya'idu b'fneim v'yomru mekudash, and they can be mekadesh. Case 3 in the Mishnah, Ra'uhu Shlosha. Let's say that there were 3 people, v'hein bezdin. So the 3 dayanim of a local bezdin, they look up in the sky. They're the only 3 who see it. Perfect. So the halacha is Yamdu Hashnaim. 2 of the people who saw it should stand up and give edus, and then the 2 who are no longer sitting down as dayanim should be replaced. Then, so let's say there's 3 people, there's 3 dayanim, 2 of them saw the moon, so the 2 of them remove themselves from the bezdin because it's Eid Na'aseh Dayan. And then we have 2 empty seats on the bezdin of 3. There's only 1 guy sitting there, so they get 2 fillers. Fine, very good. So then and then these 2 guys who saw it, then they give testimony, Drisha v'Chakira, whatever, they give all their testimony about the Kiddush HaChodesh. V'yomru, second of the very wide lines, Chav Hey Amud Beis, v'yomru mekudash. The people sitting in bezdin say, Taka, you're right. Mekudash, and then that month will be considered Rosh Chodesh, that day. She'ein hayachid ne'eman al yedei atzmo. Why did we have to fill in the gaps? We had 3 people on the bezdin. 2 of them stood up to give edus. Why did we have to fill in the gaps with another 2 people? So says the Gemara, 1 person is not allowed to be the defining factor, I should say the deciding factor, as to whether or not a Rosh Chodesh kicks in. Says the Gemara.
Getting ages, is that done during the day? Or
we're going to discuss that in the Gemara now. We'll discuss that soon. Yeah. Says the Gemara, Lamali lemisna reuhu bezdin v'chol Yisrael. Why did the case have to be so explicit to say that not only did Bezdin see it, but so did all of the Jews? Says the Gemara, Itzrich, we needed this case to be very detailed. Sal kadai techamina, I might have thought, Hol v'ra'uhu Bezdin v'chol Yisrael, because since everybody thought that was the case, then maybe we would have assumed that iparsim Allah v'loli abruha, that maybe everyone saw it. It was so well known that even if you forget to say Mekudash, we don't care. Everybody knows it's Rosh Chodesh. Kamash malan, that's not true, that you need to say the word Mekudash, otherwise it doesn't work. Says the Gemara, V'keban detanale Ra'uhu Bezdin v'chol Yisrael. If in fact everybody saw it, Nechkeru ha'edim lamali. Why do I need Nechkeru ha'edim? The Bezdin is the best possible candidates. They know the din backwards and forwards. You're going to do Nechkeru ha'edim. Why was there Chakira ha'edim? Why was there Drisha v'Chakira? Says the Gemara, Hachi Kamar. Here's why we needed it. Inami, one of the possibilities is as follows: Nechkeru ha'edim v'lo hispiku lomar mekudash ad shechashecha harezem meubar. To teach us that even here we needed to make sure that it's meubar. Says the Gemara, v'kevan detana ad shechashecha harezem meubar lamali lemisniach akira seidim klal. Leave it out. This case was a case where we know that it's going to be meubar because the sun set before they even got to it. Says the Gemara, Itzrich, I needed that as well. Sal kadai techamina tehabe chakiras edim kitchilas din umekudash kigmar din. Maybe we would have thought the following, that once we start the chakiras ha'edim, there's a process that's been put in motion, a multi-stepped process. Process number one is investigate all of the Eidim. Process number two is say Mekudash, Mekudash. And we would have thought that because it started before the sunset, we're good to go. So that maybe we would say, that's the beginning of the halacha. And therefore, and maybe we can say that we're going to be mekadesh the chodesh even at night, just like we would by dine mamanis, and that's not the case. How do we know that by dine mamanis that it works even at night? Etnan, we're about 15 lines from the bottom, 3/4 of the way down. The Mishnah writes in regards to dine mamanis, done in bayom v'gomrin balayla. Ah, beautiful. So we see that by dine mamanis that we're allowed to start the process of the din Torah during the day, and we're allowed to finish it at night. So hachanami, maybe we would have said mekach and balelia, that because it's a whole process, starting with the drisha v'chakira and ending with mekudash. So therefore, we would have thought that maybe the halacha is mekach and balelia, that we can say over here too that you can finish at night. Kamash malan, no, that just like Michael was hinting to, that the halacha is that you cannot be mekadesh shanai. Maybe we should say you can be mekadesh shanai. Why can't you be mekadesh shanai? Says the Gemara, because Amar Kra, the pasuk says ki chok Yisrael hu mishpat lelokei Yaakov. Emas have chok. When would it be a chok? Only big mardin. It would only become Rosh Chodesh by the Gmardin. Because la rachmana mishpat. And what does the Torah refer to this? What is referred to in this pasuk is mishpat. A mishpat is a regular din Torah. Ma mishpat beyom, just like a regular din Torah is at during the day only. So too over here, that's going to be the case, that it's going to be that the Kiddush HaChodesh has to take place during the day. 2 dots, 10 lines from the bottom. Ra'u Bezdin, Yamdu Shnaim ve'idu bifneim. We said that 2 of the people from Bezdin would get up and they would give testimony. It says Gemara ve'amai lo tehei shmiya gedola me're'iyah. Why are we letting it be that shmiya is better than re'iyah? Why are we giving any edus at all? They're Bezdin. They're the higher standard. Let it be that they just saw it in Dayenu. Re'iyah should be more powerful. So says the Gemara, Amar Abzera, you're absolutely right, but kigon shira'uhu balayla. Yeah, he saw it at night. So then he has to sit down tomorrow and give his edus about what he saw. But at night, even though you saw it, that doesn't help. But the Gemara then implies that if Bezdin were taka to see the moon at the right time during the day, they would be mekadesh al pi re'iyah without any drisha v'chakir, without any edus. It would just be done. Just their verbal testimony would suffice. The last 2 dots on the page, 8 lines from the bottom. Ra'uhu shlosha behind Bezdin. If 3 Jews who were dayanim, they saw the moon was ready to go and it was Rosh Chodesh. Yamdu shnaim. We said we take 2 of them to stand them in front of the Bezdin, and then because 2 out of the 3 are now edim and no longer dayanim, the yoshivu mechavrehem eitzal hayachid. They fill in the gaps. They got 2 guys, 2 shmendriks are sitting on the side. Come, just be a part of the Bezdin. It's kind of like that Taras Nadarim. Like anyone and their brother can do it. No problem at all. Take a seat. Fine. So says the Gemara, Amai, here too, same question as before. If Bezdin was the one who saw it, then hachanami neimalote shmiya gedola me're'iyah. We can't be in a place where the shmiya is greater than the re'iyah, and we can't give the same answer as before. Before we answered that it's nighttime. We can't do that here. We already said that. B'chitema, if you want to say hachanami kigon shirauhu balayla hainu hach, then these 2 cases in our Mishnah are the same. The first one taught me the din already that you're not allowed to do it at night. You're not allowed to be mekadesh al pi re'iyah at night. And if that's what this case is talking about also, then it's the same thing. Says the Gemara, no. Seifa itzrich alei, the end of this case was the important part. De'ein hayachid ne'eman al yedei atzmo. I might have thought that if I alone was the witness, if the 2 Eidim testified about their Kiddush HaChodesh to me as one person, that would have been sufficient. Disalkadai techamina, I might have thought 4 lines from the bottom, wrapping up soon. But wow, that if you ask a real big halachic shaila to a bezdin, so yes, they can give the answer. But if you have one person who is the bucky in town, so then afilu biyachid hachanami. Maybe by Kiddush HaChodesh we could have said the same thing. Hachanami nikdash biyachidi. Maybe we should assume that it's nikdash biyachidi, that we can even have the 2 Eidim speak to one other person, one dayan, and the 2 Eidim will give their testimony. The one person will listen and say mekudash, mekudash, and then it's Rosh Chodesh. Nope. Kamash malan, the halachos are different. That yes, by dine mamanis, we do allow for one expert to be the posek acharon. However, when it comes to this halacha, when it comes to the halachos of Kiddush HaChodesh, we require that it be more than one person. Why? Maybe we should say that it's even one person. that can be say mekudash, that can be the listener of the edus, says no. Ein lecha mumcha l'rabim b'Yisrael yoser mi-Moshe Rabbeinu. No one's greater than Moshe. And when it came to Moshe in regards to Kiddush HaChodesh, he wasn't allowed to paskin on his own either. Says the Gemara, b'ka'amar le'Kadosh Baruch Hu adika Aaron ba'adach. You can only give the final psak of mekudash when it's Moshe and Aharon, implying that Moshe alone was insufficient, and no one can compare to Moshe. T'chsiv, the pasuk writes, "Vayomer Hashem el Moshe ve'el Aharon be'eretz Mitzrayim lemor hachodesh hazeh lachem." Good. Last little sugya for tonight, and I've already hinted to this. Our Mishnah seems to imply that you can have an aid, you can have a dayan become an aid and an aid become a dayan. What was the case in our Mishnah? The aidim were dayanim. They saw things. They became an aid. So says the Gemara, Lamemra. This implies to say the aid nase dayan, that you can have an aid become a dayan and a dayan become an aid. Remember, what was the case? All of the Jews saw it, right? And then what did we do? We had a couple of Jews testify in front of others who also saw it. So then the aid is becoming a dayan. He's sitting on the bench. He's listening. How is that possible? You're sitting on the dayan's bench, but you're an aid. Ein aid nase dayan. Lememra, this implies the aid nase dayan. Lema, that must nisan zolo Rabbi Akiva. Why is it that Rabbi Akiva can't be like our Mishnah? Because black on white, Rabbi Akiva rejected this position of Eid Nasa Dayan. Let's see the brisa. Last line of Chaf Hayan Bebeis as we turn to the top of Chaf Vav Medal of the Tanya. Sanhedrin Shiro Echad Sheharagas Hanefesh. Let's say that the Sanhedrin themselves saw a case where one person killed another person. Top of Chaf Vav Medal. Miksasa Nasu Edim Miksasa Nasu Dayanim. The room splits, and then you have your Edim. And the Tanakama says, Diri Rabbi Tarfon, yeah, we believe Eid Nasa Dayan. That's a perfect alignment with our Mishnah, where our Mishnah as well, in the beginning of the parak of Parak Ru Bezdin, also said Eid Nasa Dayan. But what does Rabbi Akiva hold? Rabbi Akiva Omer, second line, Kula Nasin Eidim. All of them are going to be Eidim, but they ain't Eid Nasa Dayan. You have to get new Dayanim who didn't see what happened, because he holds extremely clearly 4 words, Ein Eid Nasa Dayan. So that means that if our Mishnah seems to employ or seems to allow an aid to become a dayan and not give his testimony, then it's a total opposite sheet of Rabbi Akiva, which means that our Mishnah can't be like Rabbi Akiva. So says the Gemara, as we will conclude for tonight, Afilu Tema Rabbi Akiva. We could even say that our Mishnah is like Rabbi Akiva. How so? 4th line. Ad kan lo ka'amar Rabbi Akiva hasam el b'dinei nefashos. That's a different case. In regards to a case of Din and Nefashos, the rules are different. There, that's where we say, Ein Eid Nasa Dayan. The Rachmana Amar v'shaftu ha'eda v'hitzilu ha'eda. You should judge the nation and you should save the nation, and you can't be in both the judging and the saving categories. Therefore, Rabbi Akiva says over there, Ein Eid Nasa Dayan. But B'kevan dechazinu, and I should say, B'kevan dechazinu dekatal nafsha, because this dayan actually saw the murder take place. Lo matzu chazu lezechusa. He can't also be the one to fulfill the rest of the pasuk of hitzilu ha'eda. You can't be both a shofet and a matzil. It's impossible. Aval hacha, but in our case, it being mekadesh esachodesh, no. Afilu Rabbi Akiva moda that we agree to the principle of Eid Nasa Dayan. We only hold of the rule of Ein Eid Nasa Dayan, that he can't play both roles in a case of Dinei Nefashos. We'll stop right here. Mir Hashem, tomorrow night we'll pick up with a blot and a half. Wishing you all a beautiful night.